Hello and welcome along to the teaching series, The Jesus That John Knew. Lovely to have you back with me again. We are in the middle of John chapter 9. Perhaps you'll remember we finished our last teaching episode when hearing simply that the man had went, as Jesus said, washed and came back seeing. And it was a lovely, lovely illustration, I think, of what it means to see the operation of faith and see this wonderful notion of grace moving through faith. It really was a nice illustration, I think. Now, we're going to pick up the story because this is far from over. You may think to yourself, well, the man's healed, we can go home. No, not at all. It's almost as though the healing was the preamble to the point. I've said this before and I will say it again. Don't get too attached to the actual healing itself. Don't place too much emphasis on the miraculous event because there's always so much else going on around. There's always so much going on in the background. And this is a very, very good case in point where there is a huge backstory that we've got to see. Alright, now let's just jump back into the text. After we see the man has been healed, we're in John chapter 9 and we are in verse 8. Now, the text simply tells us this. Very interesting. It says, the neighbours and those who had seen him before as a beggar were saying, is this not the man who used to sit and beg? Alright, just hold on a second, we'll get into this in a minute. But just let's put the context around this let's wrap that round it first. Would you notice what happens? Immediately the man has been healed, what is his first instinct? I think his first instinct is truly interesting. His first instinct is to go home. His first instinct, I think, is to go back and to see his parents and to say, look mum, look dad, accept me, I've become somebody, I'm healed, I'm whole, I did make something out of my life after all. My goodness me, how many of us have got that conversation pending with disappointed parents? People that thought, you know, have been so, we feel at least, that we've let them down so badly. And here's a young man who's now found some kind of healing and thinks through his healing perhaps he's going to find the acceptance from his parents that he so desperately craves. It kind of has that ring of Joey from, you know, the famous movie On the Waterfront. Look ma, look at me ma, I'm on top of the world. And so he goes back to his neighbourhood and watch the neighbours who see him coming, who'd seen him before as a beggar, say, is this not the man who used to beg? And is this not him? Doesn't it remind you of the woman who was sat at the well? Is this not? Doesn't it remind you of the invalid? Is that not the man? Doesn't it remind you of the reverse story of that? When we read in the story of Ruth, we hear about Naomi. Is that Naomi? And Naomi says, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Lord has made me bitter. Well, this man's story is, don't call me Maha, call me Naomi, because the Lord has made me better. This is this man's story. And he comes back, I think, or I don't know whether he believed that acceptance was his for the asking, but nonetheless, he came back asking for acceptance. And then some people said, yes, it is him. Others said, well, it looks like him, but it can't be him. Look how different he is. Oh, I wish you would hear this, because this is the very impact, this is the transforming nature of the gospel, my friends. That it looks like you, but it can't be you because you seem so different. The gospel is so revolutionary. When you're touched, when you're kissed by grace, the transformation in our lives is so radical. Listen, religion doesn't do that for you. I beg you to believe me on that. Only grace and love does that for you. They say, look, it looks like him. And I said, no, it can't be him. Surely it isn't. And he said, I'm the man. It's me. It's me. And they said to him, well, how come your eyes have been opened then? Now watch this, because this is both a spiritual and a physical point. And he says, the man called Jesus, he made the mud. He anointed my eyes. And he told me, he said, go and wash in the pool of Siloam. Some said it is he. Others said, no, it can't be him. Well, it's bizarre. How are your eyes open? They demanded again. Now, here's an interesting twist in our tale. In order for him to receive his healing, he had to break the law. Now, this is interesting. In order for him to complete his healing, He has to break the rules. If you like, he has to risk the ire, the wrath of the church in order to come into the fullness of his wholeness that is his in Christ. Now, remember this, the moment that the man gets up, knowing it's a Sabbath, the moment the man gets up and makes his way to the pool of Siloam, he jeopardizes any chance he's got of gaining acceptance. This is exactly the same as we saw in John chapter 5. Exactly the same. Here's your healing. In John 5 it was take up your bed and walk on the Sabbath. You're asking me to do this on the Sabbath. And here we had the same problem. You, with your mud on your eyes, go to the pool of Siloam. You see, sometimes, my friends, in order to get your breakthrough, you have to break with. Oh, I wish you'd hear that. Sometimes to get a breakthrough, you need to break with. You need to break with tradition. You need to break with the crowd. You need to break away from that which you have come to see as the accepted norm and move through into that which is the new norm, the new way in God. It was a hard choice for the man. Obviously it is. Clearly it's a hard choice for him. But I think Jesus is wanting to say to him, and by definition to us, I'm not healing you in order that you can go and join the religious crowd. That's not the point. I'm healing you in order that the religious crowd can come and join you and live somewhere beyond religion. I didn't do this so you could become a member of the club. I joined this in order that they'd leave the club and come and find you and do what you're doing. But you see, understand something. They didn't want any part of you when you were a blind man, and trust me, they're not going to want any part of you now you've been healed either. They're not going to want any part of you for this simple reason. You can see, and once you can see, there is no room for you. The moment that you can see, and you can see through, and you can see it for what it is, there's no room for you in the church. There's no room for you in the institution. Are you crazy? Because you're a see-througher. And the best you can do on a Sunday by Sunday is, as you sit there and you hold on to what you know to be true about God, is keep on rummaging through the rummaging through the hidden, if you like, to rummaging through the exterior, rummaging through the veneer, rummaging through the veil, until you can find the hidden, the mystical that's buried beneath it. Well, in verse 13, listen what happens, because this story takes a nasty turn. Well, they brought him to the Pharisees. It says they brought to the Pharisees the man that had formerly been born blind. Verse 14, here it comes. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. And this healing, make no mistake about it, is a clear Sabbath infraction. He made clay, one strike. You know in Israel, do you, that you can anoint somebody's eyes, listen to this for madness, you can anoint somebody's eyes with wine on the outside because that's legal, that's washing. But to use saliva on the inside of a man's eyes is illegal because that's remedy. He put mud in my eye. You ever wonder where you heard that expression before? Mud in your eye. He put mud in my eye. I washed and now I see. Oh, I see. Some of the Pharisees said, watch this, this man is not from God, for he doesn't keep the Sabbath. This is it. QED, case closed. The man is demonic. He can't be, and they call him Beelzebub. You know that already. They say that in the text. This man can't be from God, because if he was from God, he'd keep the Sabbath. But hang on. The healing's undeniable. This man's been born blind, and now he can see. Shouldn't we be rejoicing? No. 6 days he could have done that, but he did it on the Sabbath. Yes, the healing may be undeniable, but it's irrelevant because he broke the law. Can you imagine that? They were more concerned with the keeping of the law than they were with the renewing of a man's sight. This man is not from God. He can't be. He breaks God's rules. So they said to the blind man, verse 17, what do you say about him? Since he opened your eyes, what have you got to say on the subject? Now listen to the man. Remember, the man can see. That's the point that you mustn't miss. The man can see. And he said, he's a prophet. The Jews did not believe that he'd been born blind and received his sight. They wouldn't accept that. What are you talking about? That's your testimony? It's rubbish. You're just a faker. This is not a real healing. You were never blind in the first place. Get him out of here. In fact, get his parents in here that we can talk to them. This told you this is a high value target. Jesus didn't finish by a long shot. Now watch this. So they call for the parents of the man who'd received his sight. Verse 19 says this, and they asked him, is this your son, who you say was born blind? How does he see then? The Jews did not believe that he'd been born blind. They couldn't accept it. The man said he's a prophet and he can't accept his testimony. This is obviously a fake. This is a get-up. This is some kind of a fraud. Bring his parents, they say. Now you've got to understand this. This is where this story to me reaches its real climax, its real emotional tension. My God, what an opportunity these parents have got to do the right thing. And so they call the parents before the Pharisees, and they say to the parents, this man, was he born blind? Is he your son? How did he get his sight back? My goodness, this is such a redemptive moment. This is the moment in God that they've surely waited for their whole lives. This is the opportunity to stand up for their son. This is the opportunity to redeem their relationship. But watch what happens. His parents answered and said, yes, we know he is our son, and we know that he was born blind. But how he sees we don't know. Nor do we know who opened his eyes. You ask him, he's of age, he'll tell you. Telling verse 22. His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess Jesus Christ to be the Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. Therefore the parents said, he's of age, ask him, we don't want nothing to do with it. I mean, this is such a hard thing to get your mind around. But this was their moment. But you see, you have to see that very often communion with Jesus means excommunication from the church. Do they confess Christ and gain a son? Or do they deny Christ, lose a son, but keep their position in church? To confess Christ is to stand with the cast-offs. To confess Christ is to risk being cut off. To accept Christ and to profess Christ is to risk being de-churched, being social outcasts. The price, I fear, for this family was too high to pay. When we come back next week, I want to talk to this one more time, because for me there is something tied up here that we need to speak of. We need to speak boldly of it, because excommunication is always accompanied with curses, and that's something we need to speak to, because I know many of you who are watching these videos are people that have come out from the church, and you've come out from the church with a heavy word on you. These parents weren't in any position to do what you've been able to do. They didn't have the strength of purpose. They weren't broken enough. They weren't desperate enough, maybe. They wanted acceptance with men, and so they rejected their son and denied Christ. It is what it is. They were where they were. But I want to talk into that next week, because I hope to bring to you a real sense of relief and encouragement. Until then, God bless you. Bye-bye.